Tonight, we begin with a courtroom spectacle that legal experts had feared, prosecutors had anticipated, and the American public had never quite witnessed before. A meltdown that unfolded not over weeks or months, but in a matter of minutes. Minutes that exposed the former president's deteriorating composure. Minutes that forced the presiding judge to issue multiple warnings from the bench. Minutes that may have fundamentally altered the trajectory of this historic legal proceeding. What Donald Trump did today crossed a line that Judge Arthur Engoron had hoped would hold. And when that line broke, the court did not hesitate. They responded with firmness, with clarity, and with the full weight of judicial authority. This was not political theater. This was not campaign strategy. This was a former president of the United States losing control in a court of law in full view of cameras, reporters, and the American people. And the consequences may be far greater than anyone in that courtroom anticipated. For weeks now, there had been signals, not from official court filings, not from formal legal motions, just signals that Donald Trump was preparing something volatile. Trump has been combative, yes, but he has been calculated in his combativeness. His moves have followed a certain pattern, a rhythm, almost a choreography designed to dominate headlines while staying just within the boundaries of legal procedure. But what set off alarm bells among legal observers this morning was that the pattern went silent. Attorneys who monitor high-profile defendants know the indicators. The late-night social media tirades, the attacks on prosecutors and judges, the fundraising emails citing persecution, the sudden shift in legal strategy. All of that went quiet last night. And whenever Donald Trump goes quiet, it means something is about to get loud. His legal team had been working overtime to manage expectations. They knew their client was under extraordinary pressure. They knew the civil fraud case threatened not just his finances, but his identity, his carefully constructed image as a successful businessman. And they knew that when cornered, Donald Trump does not retreat. He escalates. What happened today was not a surprise to those paying close attention. It was an inevitability. The pressure had been building for months. And today, in a Manhattan courtroom, that pressure finally found its release. Early this morning, court observers detected what they described as unusual tension in the courtroom, including defensive posturing from Trump's legal team that had not been visible in over 3 weeks of testimony. These are the kinds of signals that experienced trial watchers only see when something significant is about to unfold. A defendant preparing to testify, a defendant preparing to confront the court, or a defendant about to lose control entirely. Reporters in the gallery didn't know which category this fell into or whether it fell into all three at once. But what they did know was that Trump was changing his approach. And when a defendant of this magnitude shifts strategy without explanation, even by the smallest measure, the court pays attention. Trump arrived at the courthouse with his characteristic bravado, waving to supporters, attacking the case to cameras outside. But inside, according to multiple sources present in the courtroom, his demeanor shifted almost immediately. He was agitated. He was restless. He was, according to one veteran court reporter, visibly struggling to contain himself. And then the testimony began. The warnings issued by Judge Engoron today were not normal. They were not routine. They were not symbolic. They were urgent. Source after source who was present in the courtroom described Trump's behavior as disruptive, contemptuous, and perhaps most importantly, dangerously close to crossing into sanctionable territory. Courtroom observers noted that Trump repeatedly attempted to interject during questioning, rolled his eyes visibly at prosecutors, and at one point appeared to mutter insults under his breath loud enough for the bench to hear. But intimidation only works if the target hesitates. Judge Engoron did not. In fact, his response today was among the most direct judicial rebukes we've seen in any Trump-related proceeding. Here's what we know. Within moments of Trump's first outburst, Judge Engoron paused the proceedings and addressed defense counsel directly. These weren't the typical judicial reminders about decorum. These were explicit warnings, tools that judges only deploy when they are preparing to hold a witness in contempt. The judge made clear that the courtroom was not a campaign rally. He made clear that outbursts would not be tolerated. And he made clear that continued disruptions would result in consequences. Trump, according to witnesses, appeared momentarily stunned, but he did not stop. Tonight, multiple sources confirmed that Trump launched into a lengthy, rambling response to what should have been a straightforward question about property valuations, including references to his political persecution that had recently been explicitly prohibited for what the judge believed was obvious relevance. Judge Engoron intervened before Trump could derail the proceedings further. He cut off the tangent. He redirected the questioning. He shut down attempts to turn the witness stand into a political platform. In other words, the judge targeted the strategy itself. The approach that would have made Trump's testimony a campaign spectacle rather than a legal proceeding. This is what made the judge's warning so urgent. Trump's behavior wasn't just theatrical, it was tactical. It represented the kind of courtroom conduct that could undermine the entire trial if left unchecked. And Judge Engoron, understanding that fully, responded with force, not recklessly, not impulsively, but judicially. He didn't clear the courtroom. He didn't immediately hold Trump in contempt. He issued clear, documented warnings that established a record. He created the foundation for potential sanctions if the behavior continued. Legal experts watching the proceedings noted that Judge Engoron was doing something deliberate, building a paper trail. Every warning, every admonition, every moment of documented misconduct strengthens the court's position should more severe action become necessary. And based on what happened next, that action may be coming sooner than anyone expected. And here's where the story becomes even more significant. Legal analysts now believe that Trump's courtroom performance was designed to test the limits of judicial tolerance after weeks of relatively controlled proceedings. Trump wanted to see whether Judge Engoron would back down under pressure. But instead, the opposite happened. Judge Engoron didn't retreat. He issued a response that was so direct, so unequivocal, that even Trump appeared to take notice. You don't get Donald Trump's attention easily, but today, Judge Engoron did. Former prosecutors speaking with media under anonymity described Trump's shift in behavior as provocation testing, a way to gauge how much disruption the court would tolerate. But Judge Engoron proved today that he remains both patient and resolute. His warnings were not only clear, they were documented so precisely that they could support contempt proceedings if necessary. That documentation matters because it shows the court is building a record. It shows that Judge Engoron is not merely presiding over this trial. He is protecting it. From a defendant who appears willing to burn down the proceedings if it serves his political interests, legal observers have long wondered how courts would handle a defendant of Trump's unique position and temperament. Today provided an answer. With the same tools available in any courtroom, applied firmly and consistently. The law, it turns out, still applies, even to former presidents. As reports continued coming in throughout the afternoon, we learned more about the scale of Trump's courtroom difficulties. Prosecutors successfully introduced evidence of property overvaluations, forcing Trump to acknowledge discrepancies he had previously denied. The New York Attorney General's office targeted financial statements that had been central to Trump's business empire for the last 3 decades. Court-appointed monitors operating within the Trump Organization reportedly documented irregularities that undermined key defense arguments. This wasn't just a bad day of testimony. This wasn't just an embarrassing moment. This was systematic exposure. This was methodical deconstruction of the Trump business mythology. And that deconstruction is the one thing Donald Trump has struggled to prevent since this case began. For every legal maneuver his team has made, prosecutors have countered with something that chips away at his carefully constructed image. The Mar-a-Lago valuations, the apartment square footage claims, the golf course assessments. Each piece of evidence has painted a picture of a business empire built on exaggeration at best, fraud at worst. And today, Trump was forced to confront that picture directly. No wonder he lost control. Remember, Trump thought this case would never reach trial. He thought his legal team could delay indefinitely. He thought the political pressure would force prosecutors to back down. He thought being a former president provided some form of immunity from accountability. But tonight, the exact opposite is happening. The trial is proceeding on schedule. The evidence is being presented methodically. The judge is maintaining control of the courtroom. And Trump is being forced to answer questions under oath in a setting where his usual tactics simply don't work. This is unprecedented territory. No former president has ever faced this kind of direct legal accountability. No former president has ever been forced to sit in a courtroom day after day while prosecutors dismantle his business legacy. The history books are being written in real time, and today's chapter will not be kind to Donald Trump. What makes this moment so critical and so revealing is that Trump's courtroom meltdown happened at a time when he is under pressure from every direction. Republican primary voters want him to focus on the campaign. Republican donors want him to stop alienating moderate voters. His legal team wants him to maintain composure in court. His political advisors want him to stop making their jobs impossible. Trump is balancing these demands while simultaneously facing 4 separate criminal indictments in different jurisdictions. And when leaders in that position make sudden, erratic moves, they're not doing it from strength. They're doing it from pressure. They're doing it from vulnerability. The civil fraud case threatens to result in hundreds of millions of dollars in penalties. It threatens to bar Trump from doing business in New York. It threatens the very foundation of his self-made billionaire narrative. For a man whose identity is built on the perception of success, that's not just a legal threat, it's an existential one. And today, that existential pressure exploded into public view. The court's formal response, now part of the official record, was designed to signal that Judge Engoron is not willing to allow this trial to descend into chaos. Court officials said plainly that Trump's conduct was inconsistent with the decorum expected of any witness in this courtroom. That is legal language for the former president is out of control and we will not tolerate it. You don't usually hear that tone from a sitting judge unless something serious is at stake. The implications extend beyond this single case. Legal experts note that Trump's behavior today could influence how other judges handle his various criminal proceedings. It could affect bail conditions, gag orders, and courtroom restrictions across multiple jurisdictions. When you demonstrate that you cannot control yourself in one courtroom, judges in other courtrooms take notice. Trump's meltdown today wasn't just damaging in the moment. It may have lasting consequences across his entire legal landscape. Meanwhile, New York Attorney General Letitia James addressed reporters in a measured, confident statement following today's proceedings.